Match the name basin. Or you can mix them up.
Oh. Yeah, I don't think we've met in person, have we? No, sir.
Thank you, sir. Yes, so.
I was out for 3 days.
Meeting of the Planning Commission on August 4th at 5:30. The land that we know as Squim once was inhabited solely by the first peoples known as the Sklallam people, represented by the 3 tribal governments, Lower Elwha Sklallam, Jamestown Sklallam, and Port Gamble Sklallam. We serve as stewards of the land within the city of Squim with the same care and consideration of the Sklallam tribe has and continues to provide. This acknowledgement is a respect to the Sklallam people and their history. The Planning Commission serves as an advisory body to the City Council. The purpose of the Planning Commission is to provide guidance, direction for Squim's future growth through continued review and improvement to Squim's comprehensive plan, zoning code, shoreline management, environmental protection, and related land use documents. The Planning Commission will have all the powers and perform each and all the duties specified by Chapter 35A.63 RCW as amended and set forth or amended by Ordinance 2009-36 and 2009-030. So could we do a roll call, please?
Commissioner Kuntz,
Present.
Commissioner Cummings,
Here.
Commissioner Fain, Commissioner Habel,
Here.
Commissioner Huth,
Present.
Commissioner LaFever, Commissioner Mahalik,
Here.
For the record, Commissioner LaFever is not coming because excused absence, right?
yes.
Okay, thank you. So next is the Pledge of Allegiance. Will you join me? Next, we've got approval of the minutes of the July 21st to 2026 meeting. Any questions, corrections, or additions? Not seeing any. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Move to approve.
A second?
Second.
Okay. Any objection to approving the minutes of the last meeting? Hearing none, they've been approved. Okay, we're on to public comment. Do we have people signed up for public comment?
We do have one signatory.
Okay, great. I've got a little spiel just a reminder of the boundaries of the public comments. Each person is limited to 3 minutes. And if for those wishing to speak on public hearing topics, please hold those comments until that portion of the meeting. But if you have something else, tell us all about it.
Thank you. John Worthington Squim. Related to the comprehensive plan work, I think it's difficult for the city of Squim to do exactly what needs to be done without WASDOT holding up their end of the board. I think that there's a need to replace some of the culverts up there. And until WASDOT gives you more of a detailed plan on how they plan on dealing with the flooding that comes down off of Bell Hill and gets brought over by the East Highland Ditch, I think it's really difficult for the city of Squim to make and Clallam County for that matter, to make a comprehensive plan. Because without it, you might end up planning over an area that may need to be used by WASDOT or something that Squim may need to adjust to after WASDOT does it. So I believe that there's something official the city of Squim can send to WASDOT and request some type of response to that. And then you can accomplish the goal, my goal, which is to separate the stormwater from the irrigation water and the river or creek water. Right now, everything's kind of a free-for-all, and we got stagnant water that gets stuck up there, and it doesn't come down all at once, and it ends up everywhere. It ends up in the buried irrigation pipes and ends up in Bell Creek, or it ends up in all the other creeks and even makes its way back to the Dungeness. So I'm after a complete separation of stormwater, irrigation water, and regular creek water instead of letting it all just mix together. And we can't do that until WASDOT complies with the spirit of the culvert decision, which requires a bridge and rather than a culvert. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
That's all the public comment at this time.
Anybody online or no?
No.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next item is general business. There's this 2025 comprehensive plan. It sounds familiar. I think we've talked about it a bit. Would love a status update, please.
Thank you. Planning commissioners, happy to give you a status update. We're getting closer to the end, so we're excited to share with you what our next couple of meetings are going to look like. So as you know, we had our second and last drop-in community open house before your meeting tonight. And then we'll be moving into your kind of last study session council or planning commission meeting on the 18th. We do have a couple things that we'll be doing in support of the comprehensive plan. We'll be providing a overview with the city council this coming Monday on August 10th of the comprehensive plan and the process we've gone through with the planning commission. We'll be hosting a developers forum on August 13th, where Travis actually will be walking through the same presentation that he'll be giving you tonight on the full Title 18, our zoning ordinance update and full update. We'll also be meeting on the day after your next Planning Commission meeting on the 18th. Will be the guests for Coffee with Colleen with the Clallam County Economic Development Council talking about our comprehensive plan update and our zoning ordinance. So we have a bit to do in August, leading all up to our September 1st public hearing in front of the Planning Commission. So what, in preparation for that public hearing and getting down to our last meeting after tonight, which is August 18th, so your second meeting of the month, that is going to be kind of our wrap up of our study sessions of the last year and a half, because again, your public hearing will be September 1st. So we thought we would share a little bit of some ideas of what we think might make sense to have happen on that day. We will be presenting what our working title right now is a crosswalk, which will be revisions and amendments to the draft that's before you as we've worked through it, as we've received public comment that we think makes sense, as we've noticed typos or things that we should, we think need to be corrected. You'll also receive a public comment crosswalk. So you'll get a revisions crosswalk from us and from staff with staff recommendations, and then you'll have a public comment crosswalk. You will also receive all the public comment that we've received to date. And in that table, that crosswalk, you'll see staff response to that and if there's a recommendation based on that comment. So that will be the documents that you'll receive from us for that August 18th meeting. We recommend for your consideration as you're finishing your review, two things. One, we know that there's, I'm sure, typos and formatting things that you have noticed. And so if you want to share that with us either via email or, write them on a hard copy and provide them to us or bring them at the meeting. Because what we are suggesting is that after we walk through what our recommendations are, that you bring forward your comments and recommendations to talk among as commission members. So we want to have a lot of the conversation be substantive on the 18th for any revisions that you've identified or questions or things that you want the Planning Commission to revisit from things from any of the chapters or Title 18 zoning that we've gone over for the last couple months. So it's a bit of a wrap-up meeting, and and it's all in preparation for the public hearing. So, do you have any questions for me on how I described that? We'll give you a staff report, a staff memo, as we do with those two crosswalks. Also, last call, if you want a notebook to take home with you tonight, if that makes the final review easier for you to have like a paper copy, we can send you home with some of the documents that we had for the open house.
Looks like everybody is happy.
Okay.
You did a good job. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
So next, we're going to hear about Title 18.
Again, because we've talked about it before, but now you guys have had the opportunity to see it. So in the past, we really focused on concepts, kind of some of the work we were doing, and now you've gotten to actually see the results of that work. So once Nick gets the PowerPoint up, we'll get going. It's been. It feels like it's been 2 years. It's probably only been one since we've started working on this, but it has been a very intentional process that we've taken the last 5 years of my experience, Carla's entire career's experience, feedback from the developers, feedback from community members, feedback from the comprehensive plan meetings. All of these things have fed the updates that we have put together. And so I'm fairly proud of this work. It took a lot of time. It took a lot of people, and we're excited to actually get to use it most importantly. So even some of the work that we've been able to do through Title 17 and then even the housing chapter in 1821 that we adopted earlier this year have already made dividends and people have already started to utilize them. And so we're excited to add this to that list of things to also use. So okay, well, can you guys see it on your screen at all? No? Okay. There we go. All right. So yes, Title 18 zoning updates. This is a relatively full rewrite. There's a few chapters that are being left alone for the time being. We'll get them later. And then there's also some chapters that have just been moved out due to the new organization of things. So Nick, if you want to jump to the next slide. So yeah, there you go. Oh, no, you're good. We're gonna opportunity to discuss recommendations and things. But this is, I just wanted to, before we get in, if you're wondering where certain things are, to start here. So chapters with no content changes, non-conforming sign, wireless facilities, modifications to said facilities, food vendors, annexations, and variances are all going to stay as they are. We'll make updates, more or less ancillary updates, so that the numbers all look right. But other than that, the content will stay the same. And then chapters that have been relocated to different titles, wetlands, critical and environmentally sensitive area protections will be going to Title 16, and then clearing and grading will move to Title 15 with the rest of the construction. So first, we've got I've lumped together most of the administrative chapters, the administration chapters. So really, this is just an emphasis on organization, how it's laid out, being updated to be consistent with the comp plan. The big changes that you'll see are found in 1820 and 1825, which is use types and definitions. Actually, it's definitions and use types respectively, but adding new definitions to match all of the new uses that you'll find in the use tables throughout the Title 18. You can't have uses if you don't define them. So there's a lot of new definitions within there. Then existing definitions are updated to either reflect some of those changes or be consistent, so we don't have conflicting definitions. And then the 1825, which is use types, those are not specific uses. They are basically groups or categories for the uses within the use table. So you'll notice when you look at the use tables, there's kind of a header for specific types of uses and then specific uses listed underneath. So 1825 kind of just details what those use types are. Any specific questions or comments, concerns on 18 on those ones? No? Okay. I didn't think so. All right. So the next is again a fairly not a lot. There's not a lot to this, but we were updating it to be consistent with the comp plan, reflecting changes to specific zones. So the opportunity or the EOAs going from the Bell Creek economic opportunity area and the River Road economic opportunity area dropping the E and just being BCOA, RROA. So just some of those updates, including the manufactured home park overlay, and just kind of making sure all of that is detailed. Any specific questions on the establishment of the zones? Yeah, and all of the site specifics are reflected on this map. And while the map is really just an image that I wanted to show to kind of visualize the work there, I don't think there will be a map there's not a map in the code in this section. But yeah, yep. So anyway, any questions on establishment of zones? Jump right into the meat here. Okay, residential districts. So I just want to kind of touch on the high level stuff. So one of the big ones is going from R48 to R49. It's a very slight increase for the number of units that can be developed on a the example I like to use, because whole numbers are easy, is on the 10-acre parcel, or on a 10-acre development, the increase would equal about 10 additional units on that 10-acre parcel. So it doesn't necessarily change what has to be set aside for things like roads, critical areas, stormwater, all of those, but it just allows one additional unit. In addition to that, the way we are calculating density is going to change. So instead of using net for both minimum and maximum, we're going to gross for maximum. So net will still be four units per net acre, and then the max will go to gross. So that's done so that it's not a math problem every time we have a development come in necessarily. So in most cases, developments will not realize their full allowance through gross density, because there are things like streets and critical areas and stormwater tracks and things like that that will deduct. And so in most cases, us using gross won't necessarily have an impact on the amount of units that are built when we're talking about detached single family. Where that'll actually happen is when we start to get attached housing or developments that are doing maybe clusters or site plan development, where you can be a little bit more creative with how it's laid out. Then you might see them realizing that gross allowance more so. But for now, the thought is it's just eliminates the need to be constrained, and they're not working up against a hard cap, and they kind of have a little bit more flexibility for creativity on design. Updates to the bulk and dimensional standards within the section obviously reflect the update to go from R48 to R49. So the minimum lot size goes down a little bit from 5,400 to just over 4,800. And that is done essentially to account for the ability to have more units. There's a new section within this chapter specifically for cluster housing. Think of cottage housing. We're just going to use the term cluster housing instead. It's going to be for smaller 2-acre or less developments. And then a fully revamped planned residential development code that is specific to the R49. So whereas in the current code, PRDs are allowed in a number of different zones, there's really no need for them anywhere except in the R49 that has density caps. The other zones don't have density caps, so using the PRD in the R49 is really the only place that it makes sense. And so we made a lot of updates to it so that it's easier to administer, easier to understand. It's a more transparent process, and there is the ability to achieve a density bonus with it on option 3, but that requires providing or setting aside the most amount of open space with that. So ultimately, as we touched on in past meetings, what this all means. I'll use the 10-acre development kind of idea here. Existing, so under current net density calculations, we're looking at, under the R48, we're looking at about a yield of about 60 units on a 10-acre parcel or on a 10-acre project. With the current PRD section that allows for a 25% density bonus, you could get up to about 75. So with the changes that we are proposing, the baseline for a subdivision in the R49 would be 70 units for over 10 acres. Option 1 of the PRD would be 80, option 2, 90, and then option 3, 100. So the most you would ever see in the R49 would be a gross density of 10 units per acre. You'd get really small lots, but you'd have a lot of set aside for open space to account for that. So as a way to incentivize getting more units, there would be more land left undisturbed. So any specific questions about residential zoning? Oh, yep, Carla.
Sorry, I just wanted to note that I know it's been a bit of time, but this is what Travis walked through on our April 7th Planning Commission meeting. Okay, so I see a couple head nods that you remember that. So he went a little bit more in detail, and Planning Commission gave us some feedback on, kind of how to set up those options under the planned residential development. So your preferences and your feedback have been incorporated into this draft based on that April 7th meeting.
All right. Any immediate thoughts? No? Okay. Just moving right along. Okay. So commercial, this is our regional commercial, highway commercial, and neighborhood business. Again, similar throughout all of the zoning updates. There's a lot of just organizational changes for ease of administration, making it a more administrable code. The big updates, there's no real use updates or changes to RC. Highway commercial is going to have some updated retail and service, personal and professional business uses allowed. That's consistent with some of the redesignation requests that we received for properties in those zones. And then neighborhood business is going to get more travel service uses due to its proximity to Old Olympic. It makes some good sense, and it's kind of the only zone that is NB is out there by the roundabout. So including travel services there wasn't we didn't feel like it was a stretch to do. But other than that, not a lot changing in the commercial districts other than more of an organizational. Go ahead, Will.
So excuse me. I'm assuming that's around Rock Plaza.
Correct. You got it. Yep.
So you expanded that zone a little bit from around Rock Plaza?
So the zones area stays the same, but the allowed uses will be updated to reflect more of kind of its proximity to a highway, albeit the old
was that a
Olympic highway.
request? Just out of curiosity.
So we've had some inquiries in the past and some loose interpretations of the neighborhood business zone and what was allowed to move into Rock Plaza over the years kind of lended itself to updating it so that those uses were more conforming than maybe a lot of the work we're doing is just adding more prescriptiveness in the use tables to say, like, we're not kind of trying to read between the lines or really what's the true meaning of this definition. It's like, let's get prescriptive. So even though we're expanding the uses, you could make the case that some of those uses were already allowed. We're just making it more clear.
Oh,
So
sounds great.
yeah. And I guess this is the first place that I want to pause and also include that you may have noticed that building design standards have now been embedded within the zoning code. This was I'm not going to call it a last minute change, but it was a 23rd hour of the day change where we initially were thinking of having design standards all within the design review chapter. But as we got to reviewing it, it really felt like it would serve itself better. Instead of writing a bunch of exceptions or specific rules to certain types within the design review, it's like, well, let's just put the standards in the actual zone where it's going to apply. So the design review code, when we get to that chapter, it's going to be more of the process and the review as opposed to the true standards themselves, which will be found in the specific zoning codes themselves. So that is a new change than what we kind of talked about in the past, but that also includes landscaping as well. So that way, if somebody knows what they want to do and where they're located, they can kind of one-stop shop as far as what the standards are, and then the process is just live elsewhere. Any questions about that organization? No? Okay. And that goes for every zone, but all right. So business and employment districts. I kind of already touched on the dropping of the E, so eliminating the economic development from the title is not just in the name, it's in what is allowed. So specifically in the Bell Creek and River Road opportunity areas under the existing code, there's a requirement for commercial. In Bell Creek, it was a minimum of 50% commercial had to be built with any development. So it essentially killed any projects that wanted to do standalone housing. While they could provide standalone housing on certain portions of the development, the way the code was written was they needed to also come in with a plan for 50% of the site to be commercial. So it was a challenge that was hindering its ability to be developed based on the market's demand. Even the Hovey study that was done for the site that essentially was used to establish these zoning districts actually suggested that housing was one of, if not the best and highest use of these properties. And then it was kind of put behind a requirement to provide employment opportunities. While important and kind of in conjunction with the opportunity zones at the time, it was an effort by the city to try to spur economic development, which clearly has not happened as you look at this picture and there's nothing there. So what we've done is we've tried to allow for a kind of clean slate approach to these zones, so that the market can kind of decide what is the best and highest use without trying to tell them exactly what to do. Now, all of the uses that were allowed are still allowed. We just removed the requirement to do them together, or that you must do X amount of something, and then. And that's specifically for the OA properties in the BC and the RR. Heavy commercial warehousing, I mean, we have such little amount of that there was really no need to make any tweaks to it. And then the HTLI is, again, that's another one that has, there's some strong feelings behind it. It was done probably similarly to the OAs as an opportunity to try to spur economic growth in Sequim. It has not been fruitful. If you go and drive around and look at all the HTLI properties, I think there is 1 or 2 that are using it the way that is intended. Actually, there's 3. And 2 of those are new within the last 24 months. So it's been pretty slow for those. So we did try to incorporate a few more uses that were still somewhat consistent with industrial, like maybe manufacturing, breweries, wineries, distilleries, so that it's keeping with the uses that were considered there or are similar, but maybe just expanding it a little bit. And all of this was supported with the Leland market analysis as well. So really just trying to see what the market demand is for these properties and see what can happen. So that's kind of the approach here. Any questions on this one? All right. I guess if you want to go back, one of the things that is specific to all of these is it's not just that there's not just generic landscape requirements in all of these zones. It is very specific to the types of uses and the intensive uses anticipated. So just kind of wanted to point that out. Like if you do have comments in the future, pay close attention to that, because it is different zone by zone. So, all right, you're good. Okay, downtown. The big thing is consolidating DMU 1 and 2 into a single DMU. There was one use that was different between the two. So it really didn't make sense to have 2 separate zones just for one use. So we just consolidated them into a single zone. There were some changes for things like dropping the Florida area ratio requirement in our downtown districts, because if we're going to have bulk and dimensional standards, what's the point of having a double dip and using floor area ratios when bulk and dimensional standards are already going to regulate the form and size and scale of buildings? It wasn't necessary. There's one change that we did propose as far as bulk and dimensional standards go, and that is dropping the downtown core's height from 45 to 38, which is consistent with the DMU. So then all of the downtown districts will be restricted to a 38-foot height limit. We thought that was appropriate because most of the downtown core, at least where it's located today, is pretty well built out with these existing buildings. And if we were to see a new building in there that would jump up to 45 feet, it could, throw off the visual appearance of downtown. So that was the thought there. Any questions on that? All right. We're moving right along. This is great. Mixed use districts. So this is our community mixed use CMU lifestyle district LD, not the senior lifestyle district, and the planned resort community. So the PRC is a new, while it's not a new zone, it's a new inclusion to the zoning standards. In the past, the PRC was always just referred back to its underlying the way that the code worded it, it just kind of circled back to R48. And so the PRC didn't have zoning standards. So what we're doing with this update, well, there's no major updates proposed for CMU or lifestyle, is we are incorporating uses, bulk and dimensional standards, development standards for the PRC specifically. And the reason for that is we are taking the past comprehensive plan kind of designation and the current comprehensive plan designation and incorporating use types that are consistent with a resort community. So what we started from, just to kind of give background on that, is we started at R48, right, or R49, and we took a look at what's allowed through a PRD. And through a PRD, that was the most obvious, like we can add those as allowed uses. And then it stemmed to, okay, so in this mixed use district, if this is where this is going to fall, let's look at CMU and let's look at lifestyle district. What are the uses that are appropriate to include there as well? So I think the end result is we have a zoning code that is very similar to the lifestyle district as far as what's allowed and what we can anticipate from bulk and dimensional standards. But with some inclusion of things that maybe are more resort oriented or self-sustained community oriented for a resort community. So it is a new section within here. But any specific questions on what we've done there? Nope. Okay. All right. And right along. Back one. So the next thing is master plan overlays. So as you know, we have a moratorium in place for master plans. And this aerial is a site of an application that came in. So it was the most appropriate. The main goal of the update is establishing objective criteria for evaluating planned developments, specifically master plans. The current code was, for a lack of a better term, a mess. It was unclear. There wasn't a clear review pathway. It did not identify all of the things that were going to be necessary for review, and there was just a lot of vulnerabilities in that code. So what we've done is we've identified sort of two types of master plan processes with differing review authorities. One is a process that would go to the hearings examiner and what it entails in order to go to hearing examiner, and then one that would go to city council. So essentially what that boils down to is if you are going to utilize bulk, dimensional, and use types of your underlying zone, then you can go to hearing examiner. But if you're asking for sort of off menu or effectively rezoning the property to something else, then you would have to go to city council. So it's a way to create a predictable framework for large scale coordinated development, just clarifying acreage eligibility requirements, and it provides flexibility while maintaining consistency with the comp plan, and really just it creates a more transparent process. So any questions on the two types of applications there, and some of the things that you're allowed to vary on with hearing examiner would be like specific design standards. So you can provide your own design standards. You can suggest private streets. You can utilize different landscaping styles. But ultimately, at its core, it's still retaining its underlying zoning requirements. And then the off menu would be, you want to go higher, you want to build taller, you want to have increased density, you want to do uses that aren't allowed in the zone, and that's where I like I said, it's more of an effective rezone than it is a prescriptive application process. Questions on that? No? All right. Manufactured home park and mobile home park overlays. Not a lot to talk about here. We just consolidated the manufactured home park standards with the newly adopted in the last couple of years mobile home park overlay section of code. So it's a one-stop shop. If you're going to do an MHP, you can just go to one code. And that's it. So any questions on that one? Nope. All right. So other land use districts. So as part of our proposal to establish more of the public zone and open space and agricultural conservancy, we're not adding anything to open space or agricultural conservancy. Those ones will stay as they are. But there are a number of parcels, as we've discussed through the redesignation and thus the rezoning process, that are going to go to public, which include, City of Sequim properties, school district properties, PUD properties, Clallam County properties, and so on. Really, what we're doing here is we're providing standards for those properties that don't have to try to find a permit pathway forward in the R48 zone for a school. Some of you may recall we had to do a conditional use permit for the library project, and it had to go to hearing examiner. And the hearing examiner was all but ready to approve it as soon as he found out what it was for. So when that's the impression and that's the that's the process we're going through, it does feel a little bit like it's too much. And so that's where having publicly designated parcels and then establishing a project specific review process for those parcels, in addition to whether they need a conditional use or an administrative conditional use, really sets them up to know what is our permit pathway forward. What do we have to do in order to do what we need to? So we're trying to get out of the way a little bit for these important facilities and services to operate and to get established. Any questions on that one? Yeah, go ahead, Will.
So we had talked a little bit about the public zone before. My question is, sometimes a pre-designated parcel is not the most ideal space for a public facility to be located. Would they essentially just be following the old process? Say we needed to put a new fire station in somewhere, and it's in a residential zone.
Right.
Is this kind of just to provide better properties that could be available for that kind of designation?
Sure. Yeah, and I mean, really, right now, it's kind of an inventory, so to speak,
Okay.
of the existing. So
we're not looking at vacant parcels.
No.
Okay.
Unless it's owned, like the school district owns some vacant land. But we coordinated with them, and they've got some parcels that they didn't want to go to public because maybe it's not their long-term plans.
Right.
So there's an opportunity, potentially for organizations to add it to public if they say the Clallam Transit or the city acquires land that isn't currently within the public zone. We have a process to get it rezoned, and we have a code for it.
Okay.
So, but yeah.
And also just to add on that, we have public uses identified in all of our districts allowed uses. So it doesn't require the rezone in order for them to move forward with permitting. So they still would be able to permit a public use and come in for a rezone, subsequent, at a later date. So it's not going to make the rezone happen before a permit could be submitted.
Are those conditional uses like public use for the most
But
part?
it depends on the zone, but I think we tried to make them administrative conditional uses. Yeah, and some will be full conditions. It just depends on the district.
Anything else on this one? Nope. All right. It's a good question. All right. So open space and landscaping. This is consolidating this into kind of a single administration chapter. Landscaping is really going to focus on the process, the maintenance, the establishment, the planting types, and more of the general requirements for landscaping, whereas the standards you'll find them in the individual zones. And then as far as open space goes, this is where you will find open space requirements for specific types of development. So any particular questions on open space or landscaping requirements? And I'll add that there is the possibility in the PRD for additional land open space requirements to exist. So that would be in addition to or in conjunction with the standards outlined in this title or in this chapter. Go ahead.
For open space and landscaping, how does that figure in to, say, Rolling Hills development that's under construction now?
So it's already been established.
Yes,
so,
it's history.
Yeah. So and just for the specific project, Rolling Hills, it's a PRD. So if we were looking at a future PRDs have open space requirements, whereas a standard subdivision just has to provide basically yard space. They wouldn't have to provide additional open space in addition to their yards. But a PRD as an incentive for smaller lots and potentially a +1 to their density have to find a way to provide open space. And it's not just passive. There has to be, there are specific amenities that have to be included within the open space as part of the PRD. So it's used more as an incentive for other types of developments. In the current code, there was just a generic and standard 20% requirement on land division projects. There's some case law out there that would suggest that to be a taking, and so it's not really something that is strongly encouraged or supported by legal authority. So just having a blanket 20% you must is not something that we rolled into the new code. And instead, open space has become a design choice and an incentive for other more creative types of development. So yeah. Other questions on that? All right.
I just wanted to highlight one section. Travis talked mostly about open space, but we did roll landscaping into the section too. And you did. Okay. Yeah. And you might have had a bullet point on there, but I wanted to note that we did include an alternative landscape plan. Did you mention that? Okay. So this is a technique I've used in the past that is really helpful, that sometimes based on, again, is site specific, based on maybe a lot of times it's based on existing vegetation that's on there that may not, if you look at it, fit our standards, but you don't want them to like remove it to then plant something that meets our standards. So it's a way to work with a potential developer to meet or exceed our standards by an alternative way. A lot of times, again, that's using some existing vegetation that's already on the site. So thanks.
All right, off-street parking. So this has been a hot topic statewide. The City of Sequim has a number of RCWs that we had to incorporate into our updated parking standards. They're there at the bottom for things like affordable housing, mass timber, modular development, newer retrofitted housing, surfacing and stall size for residential units, ADUs, co-living, new housing in existing buildings. All of those have been incorporated, but that is all that the city has had to do. We have not opted to do anything more to essentially lessen the amount of parking that is required. We have opted to update our off-street parking to be more consistent with the use types that we've now established. So the categories or use types in 1825 are all reflected here in the parking standards. So if you're in this use type category, then that means this is your parking requirement. So it's a lot clearer what goes with what. And as far as residential goes, we did include that multifamily across the board, whether so there is a slight reduction for like multiplexes, which in today's code would be 2 spaces per unit, is down to 1.5. So multifamily with multi-bedroom units is 1.5, and then studio multifamily would just be a single space per unit. So there are some updates, but they're not the sweeping changes that a lot of jurisdictions in the state are required to do. So we were, like I said, the list there at the bottom is what we had to do, and then we just made some kind of some updates for administration. Any questions on off-street parking? All right. Essential public facilities. Again, this is updated just to better reflect the requirements from the state. So from our last meeting to today, that list, it looks a little different. And the reason for that is the first go around that I did when I wrote this, I was looking at the list then, and Carla and I talked about it, and we're like, we should probably just look at it again. And it had been updated. And so this is now the updated list of essential public facilities as defined by the state, or at least very similar to. So there's nothing here that is missing from, there's nothing here that's missing from what is included by the state. And then we do also include that other uses determined to be essential public facilities pursuant to, so we still have that flexibility if we need, or if they add new ones, or if we determine, hey, this is an essential public facility for SQUIM, even though it may not be one based on the state's definition. So all EPFs are allowed to operate. However, one of the other things that I think I said at the last meeting is that we had to allow them in any zone. That is not the case. We just have to allow them to be sited throughout the city somewhere. So we can restrict certain EPFs from certain zones. And so we have done that based on what we believe to be the anticipated intensity or potential, how they would fit in those zones. So specifically residential zones, aren't the greatest fit for some of these EPFs. So, but there needs to be other zones that would allow for them. So we're not restricting or prohibiting the siting. There is a path forward. And so based on their intensity and use type in the use tables, they would either be reviewed as a conditional use permit or an administrative conditional use permit. So I would either go to hearing examiner for CUPs or staff for ACUPs. Any questions on EPFs? No? All right. Temporary transitory accommodations, really nothing is changing from what we included in 1821 that you guys adopted recently. So this is just being pulled out of a chapter, or being pulled out of a section within a chapter into its own chapter itself. So that's the only real update here. Other than that, no changes being made. Good. Okay. Affordable housing exceptions. So we have an applicant that is utilizing the 1821 code that was recently adopted. And so this is kind of a rendering of the site above. You can kind of see if you want to check the rest out, you can go on to our portal or on our website. You can see all the documents. No, again, we're just bringing over the chapter or the section from 1821 into its own standalone chapter within this Title 18 rewrite. There is one housekeeping update that, that I may include as an edit that you'll see in the crosswalk, and that's just has to do with lot sizes. It wasn't one that was, it's kind of it's an obvious one to some extent, but I don't want us to unintentionally create a barrier for, larger single site developments than what we're trying to do. And so it'd be an allowance for an exception for minimum lot sizes, and then an exception for also maximum lot sizes. So essentially it would just be an exception for lot sizes so that, we're not restricting them to locate based on the size of the lot It's more of the actual use of the land that we're reviewing. Any questions on this one? All right. Daycare facilities, fairly straightforward update per the 2 RCWs listed on here. We just needed to get into compliance with state statutes for family daycare homes and child daycare centers. And so we kind of went verbatim with what the state is requiring us to do and where these are allowed to locate. We don't have as much say as we do with other types of uses. So been appropriately set up that way. Any questions on daycare facilities? Oh, okay. All right, design review. So what was once a really long chapter has now been kind of sprinkled throughout the zoning chapters. So each individual district chapter will have specific design requirements for those districts. So you'll see different design standards for the industrial type zones, and you'll see different design standards for others. So really, this is now going to be utilized more as the process. One of the things that I need to include throughout the zoning chapters is a reference back to this one so that we know when it is applicable, because right now the standards are just listed, but not all buildings and not all projects have to go through design review. So I have to add a kind of a hook in all of the zoning chapters that sends them here to see what the process is, to see if it even applies to them. So, but there are some generic design standards still included in this more overarching chapter that apply to all design projects. So and I guess the other kind of nice thing that we're doing with design review is we're allowing the applicant to kind of choose when design review is reviewed. It can either occur in conjunction concurrently with site plan review, or they can do site plan as a standalone and then do design review with their building permit submittal. So it just becomes a review on top of a different permit type. So it's not going to necessarily be a standalone review anymore. It's its own process, yes, but it's always going to be done with either site plan or building permit. Questions on design review? Speaking of site plans, site plans as a standalone review don't exist in SQUIM's code today, and it has been a challenge because the current code basically locks site plan review behind design review because they are combined into one process in our current code. And unless there is a new building being constructed that triggers the need for design review, it is hard to do site plan review. So what we have established is a site plan process. So instead of design review as we know it today, it'll be site planning. And site planning will be utilized both minor and major. So it'll be used for a number of things. If somebody wants to modify landscaping on an existing site, we need a new site plan. Like we need to know what's being done. So this is a way for us to have a process to be able to effectively enforce and require city standards on developments, whether new or kind of pre-existing. So any questions about site plan review? Like I said, the scope of what would apply to a site plan is going to vary because it could be something as small as an accessory structure on a building, or it could be a full retail center development, right? Like it just is going to depend. Go ahead, Will.
I guess my question would be is if someone is making a minor change, are they held to the same standards for a site? Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Perfect.
So there will be a difference between minor and major, and basically what you can do with a minor site plan compared to what's required on a major. Because of the major, with a lot of the stuff the state's doing as it relates to, like, say, a binding site plan, where you don't necessarily need to get a binding site plan to do a condominium development. You can just record your condo with the state. We need still a site plan, even though it's not a binding site plan, because those are two different things. But so the major site plan may have requirements that are similar or closely resemble a binding site plan so that we get a similar result. We get a similar end result and the improvements are still the same. And that's not kind of it's not a way to kind of skirt the code. It's like, we're not going to do a binding site plan because we won't have to do frontage improvements now. So there are definitely, it's a good question because there are definitely requirements of a major site plan that wouldn't be appropriate for a minor. Questions on that? Okay. All right, ADUs, again, we're just taking it from 1821 and moving it over. After reading through it and reading the RCW again for what feels like the 1,000th time, I do think there's going to be some housekeeping to update to clarify setbacks. I don't think the way that we had it in 1821 is necessarily wrong or incorrect or in conflict with the RCW. It's just not as clear as I'd like it to be. So I'm going to add some kind of cleanups. So one of the things is the state requires that there be no restriction on setbacks adjacent to property lines on alleys, unless the alley is routinely plowed. What does routinely mean? They don't say. So we don't get that much snow in Sequim. So right now, I'm going to propose that we just allow ADUs to be located on lot lines adjacent to alleys. And then another thing that I haven't talked to Carla about yet, but we will, is in addition to that, there are setbacks that apply to essentially, we can't prohibit a conversion of an ADU structure if it does not meet primary structure setbacks. So under the current 1821, we required new construction ADUs to abide by primary structure setbacks and bulk and dimensional standards, unless it's a conversion. If it's a conversion, that goes all away and they get to do whatever they want. So my suggestion is going to be that ADUs should follow our accessory structure setbacks and bulk and dimensional standards, as long as they are not less than primary. Then that, or I shouldn't say less than, more restrictive than the primary. That way, it's a more consistent application for all ADU types, whether it's new, old, and what have you. So that's kind of just as I was reading through it, it really feels like ADUs are it's a big push from the state, and so I want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to not put up unintentional barriers, or logically, if one type of structure can be used as an ADU, what's the difference in if it's new or converted? That's kind of my thought. So any thoughts on that thought? Go ahead, Alex.
Oh, question. So let's say if it has to be say 10 feet from the property line on the sides, if there's an alley, then it can go right up to the line.
Yeah. So
instead of it being 10 feet in
correct.
the back also. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And that requirement along the alley comes from the state. So we don't really have a choice on that one. We do have a little bit of flexibility on we can't prohibit conversions of existing structures. We can't require that they meet setbacks. Like, we have to just let them be. And so that's where my thought is okay, well, if conversions are allowed to operate and get closer, then why don't we just get it consistent with our accessory structure code? And the big thing to remember in all of this is the IFC and the IBC are still going to dictate fire separation. So even if they do get close, if there's another structure within 10 feet, we have the ability to require fire separation or firewalls. So regardless of what's proposed, it's not going to result in necessarily unsafe conditions. So just kind of keep that in mind.
Okay. And then parking for the inhabitants of these ADUs will be on-street parking in front of the primary
Well,
house,
so
probably.
there's still a requirement that they have to provide one off-street parking space, or at least they have to provide a single parking space unless they're within, I believe it's a half mile, we determined, of transit center. So if it's within a half mile of transit, they don't have to provide parking at all. But if they're outside of that, then they would still have to provide one off-street parking space per ADU.
Okay, thanks.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So you said within a half a mile of the transit center, is that a transit center or like a transit stop?
So it's this guy, right?
Okay.
Yeah, right next to us here. Ultimately, we didn't have to do that. SQUIM doesn't have the type of transportation facility that's considered with the ADU update. It's more of a large transit facility that we don't have one. But we opted to include it because it is kind of the transit hub for the city. And so
Okay.
we felt it was an appropriate half-mile radius from there and to utilize it.
Okay. And then I have another question
Yep.
for clarification. So you had mentioned that there's no setbacks if the alley is not routinely plowed. Does the city of Sequim make it a routine to plow the alleys when we plow for snow?
So I
And
guess
could that be a
yeah.
I mean, how would
it's-
we consider that?
So it's the one way that we could write it is that it basically it requires city engineer approval to locate on a property
Okay.
line, and then that gives kind of Public Works the ability to be like, all right, well, this is one that we do end up routinely plowing.
Okay.
I don't what constitutes routinely. Like I said, it's not totally clear. It is once a year routinely. Might be a stretch, but it's hard to say. But it is
Right.
something we can talk about.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, home occupation permits. So we've broken this into two types of home occupation permits. One that is just an administrative HOP, and then one that requires an administrative conditional use permit in addition to the HOP. And the reason for that is maybe has a little bit higher intensity of use or potential for more trips to the site, which would just require, doing a notice to the neighbors, letting them know, gathering comments, seeing what issues might come up. But the big difference there is you see the standard HOP requirements limits, but then what an ACUP allows you to do is you could potentially have one non-resident employee employed at the site. You could have up to 10 customer visits and 5 delivery trips per day, and limited use of screened yard space. Now, may ask, how are we going to monitor that? And it's a great question. And we want to having the conditions help a lot when it comes to when we get complaints, right? Because at least if we have it as a condition and if they start to exceed it or it feels as though we can exceed it, we can kind of at least do a friendly reminder like, hey, your conditions of approval are this. And if it gets to a point where code enforcement's involved, that's essentially the step that it would go to, and we would have to get code enforcement involved. So any questions on HOPs and the two processes? Okay. All right, conditional use permit. So that conditional use permit we did for the library, here's a picture of it. So anyway, this is more or less just the process. So it doesn't get into what is a conditional use and what is an administrative conditional use. It's just what are the requirements, what are we authorized to do through CUPs and ACUPs. There is an update for we've tweaked the permits are valid for 3 years or is established through the review. So there was just a request that we go down from 5 to 3, but we've retained the ability to extend that based on the use type if it's determined necessary that they need a little bit longer to get it completed or started. Yeah. And then another thing in here is approved uses may continue indefinitely once established and operating consistently with conditions. So if they want to expand, there's a process for modifying your CUPs, or if they want to add more or whatever it might be. It's all kind of detailed here. Questions on CUPs or ACUPs? And CUPs go to the hearing examiner. I think I've said that a few times, and ACUPs would be staff. All right, couple more. Actually, I think this is it. TUPs. So this the image here is an application we got for a temporary parking lot. Instead of doing full, basically full parking lot standards, it's just going to be temporarily located and then potentially removed. And if it's not removed, then they would have to meet permanent standards. But ultimately, the updates to the TUP code is being done so that we can have more flexibility for the types of TUPs we issue and how long they're good for. So instead of kind of allowing a temporary use to locate somewhere for 6 months to a year, we have now the ability to have a more seasonal or one-time use. That's, think of, I think the example I've used in the past is the RV sales lot over at JCPenney, the old JCPenney building, soon to be the Shipley Center parking lot, the hot tub sales lot, where they operate for like a weekend, and it's maybe not an allowed use in the zone. It's an off-site use. They're not an on-site business, but they want to operate for a short duration. They would get a temporary use permit. And so historically, a lot of those used to be done through special event permits, and this is kind of our effort to have those regulated through the appropriate permit pathway, which is a temporary use as opposed to a special event. Any questions on updates to TUPs? No? Okay. All right. Any questions at all? Yeah, Will.
More of a comment than anything. If we go way back to the high tech, low industrial zone, I had one concern with some of the added uses for that. Storage facilities aren't really job creators.
Sure.
I mean, I'm sure the lots will get developed with the storage facility, but if one of our goals is job creation through these opportunity districts, I think that should be considered.
Okay.
And maybe it's holding it to a higher density standard, one of those double stacks to not take over the whole zone. Just something to think about.
Okay. No, I think that's appropriate. Okay. Yep. Anything else? Yeah, go ahead, Alex.
Yes, kind of for, I guess, clarity for homeowners that have a lot that can take an ADU. The construction standards for the ADU, everyone will immediately think, oh, can I put a tiny home there, or can I get, like on Larson's lot, one of those kind of prefab small manufactured home put on it? Where is it clear where someone would find the details on that?
Yeah, so essentially where the city operates is that if it's built and licensed as a park model, essentially it's an RV, a recreational vehicle, and it's not intended for full-time occupation. And so it is not permitted as a dwelling unit. There are existing RV parks that are allowed to continue to operate and can actually replace RVs or move tiny homes into them, since they were established prior to the more or less prohibition of them. But essentially, if it is a park model, it's licensed and tagged by L&I as such, then it cannot be used as a dwelling unit, and that would include ADUs.
But some of the small prefab manufactured homes would
Sure.
be
as
fine.
long as it meets, and this is our building official has this spiel dialed. He gives it a lot, but if it's HUD standards, essentially, it's fine.
Okay.
But if it's park model standards, it's not.
Right.
Is kind of the or building or HUD, no park model.
And of course, whatever it is, it's going to be fully hooked up to
Correct.
utilities.
Yeah. And ADUs can tap into the existing utilities on an existing lot. If they want to be a standalone unit, we recommend getting their own. But yeah,
Right. And how about kits found on Amazon? They'd have to meet a certain
same deal.
HUD
HUD,
standard,
HUD, and
HUD
building
standard.
code. Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
great, thanks.
Go ahead, Will.
Just kind of an add-on to that. The county recently, because got a lot of the same questions, especially about park models. They're allowing placement of a park model on properties. Now, I'm not 100% sure on the code, but
Right.
if you do that, it kind of excludes you from also building an ADU.
Got it.
So you can get one and rent it out, but it's not considered an ADU, but you also can't build an ADU. I don't know if the city of Squim.
'Cause I know the county doesn't have the same, like they don't have to allow ADUs. I think Clallam is pretty open to them because I think that you just basically request it and
Almost every zone allows ADUs. Well, I believe every residential zone does. The only one off the top of my head is commercial forest does not allow detached
Got
ADUs,
it.
but you can do attached ADUs.
Okay.
But the park models are an interesting one, and
Yeah.
I'm sure you will continue getting questions.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know Port Angeles allows them. And from what I heard, their intent is that it's more of a transitional housing opportunity because they know that it's not really a long-term housing solution, but we all know that they're going to be used as such. And it doesn't necessarily mean, and like when I say all that, it doesn't necessarily mean that the new park models aren't inherently safe. But that is kind of the standard is they don't meet building code and they don't meet HUD standards. So therefore, as of today, we don't allow them. Could that change? Maybe. Like there's a possibility that it does, but for right now, we have not changed that stance in the code. Go ahead, Karen.
What about the storage of these on the properties?
So the storage hasn't changed. There's some requirements for the storage of recreational vehicles on site. I believe it's in like your front yard driveway, no more than 24 hours. It can be parked in the rear indefinitely, essentially in your backyard if you have an RV. It's supposed to be on a parking pad, which per off-street parking is supposed to be paved. There can be some exception. I think actually I may have wrote it or as approved by the city engineer. So Nick, our city engineer, can take a look if somebody wants to park something in the rear and what does it need to be, mainly for stormwater. Like, you know, we've got critical aquifer recharge areas. So for motor vehicles, we want to ensure that we're not having things leak into the ground. And that would be the purpose of having more paved surfaces for parking. But as far as in the front and in the side, there's a restricted time allowance for how long they're supposed to be parked there. Again, it's code enforcement to get them to move. And so everybody's favorite thing. And if they're being lived in, that's a whole other slippery, tricky slope. So
And do we have the personnel to actually figure
currently the
that
city
one out?
is looking for a code enforcement officer. We do not have one as of right now, and it would be based out of the police department. So as far as I know, but there would be some code enforcement duties for our department, which could be parking. So, yep. I know that the county court has not really been the best about especially if it's being lived in, it's a lot harder to get them to move. So it's a challenge for sure. All right, anything else? And so I guess there's no slide for it, but next steps is I've kind of touched on some of the ideas we have in some of the edits, but we'll give you a full, like Carla mentioned, crosswalk of all of the Title 18 edits. I think I'm over 30 or so now already. I'll probably have more before the 18th. But yeah, looking forward to any comments and markups you guys have so I can get it all incorporated. But happy to have any feedback or,
Now, the draft that's online, does that include what you've talked about?
no, we're not going to
Okay.
touch it until after hearing. Yeah, we're going to leave it as is. We'll provide our kind of list of edits, and then your recommendation or motion will be to incorporate those in what goes to council. Steps. Okay. All right. That's it. Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you. Thank
Yeah.
you
Yep.
very much. I hope you're proud of your work and your energy that you've expended, but thank you. Okay, so we have some new business. Any new business? I guess it's the director's report. That'd be great.
Thank you. Well, I do have a couple, one new item to share with you and then to talk a little bit more about our comprehensive plan package. So you may be familiar with the Flores Acres neighborhood and the annexation effort that's been underway this year for them. And so we are primarily to provide city services to failing septic systems. So it's been a really collaborative effort between the city of Sequim, Clallam County, and the HOA. So our little piece of the pie is the annexation process, and we are nearing the end of it. So I'll be going to council on Monday, this coming Monday, with an ordinance for them to adopt. That finalizes the annexation process. So it's been good because we haven't really done an annexation for 20 years, and I personally hadn't done one for almost that long, and so it was good to get refreshed on annexation law. And it's, as you would imagine, it's all state RCW kind of mandated. But pardon? Yeah, now I have a handout. We have a procedural guide, so we're in good shape. But anyway, that will there's one last step after council takes action, which is coordinating with the state Office of Financial Management and the Secretary of State's office. So that annexation will take place probably before the end of the comprehensive plan. So our final maps will show Flores Acres incorporated into our city limits. Right now, the maps do not. The second thing is I want to just take a moment to reflect upon the journey that we've been on for the last couple years. And our website has a little bit of like a process timeline in there. And I just wanted to walk back to in 2024, we did community visioning with the studios at Guy Cole and at some of the farmers markets and some of the things that our consultant SCJ did at that time. In 2025, we spent a lot of time together going through each of those chapters in the comprehensive plan, talking about goals and policies, ensuring our consistency with updates that the state legislature made for our housing work. So we have fully GMA compliant Appendix A for all of our housing technical documents that we needed to generate. And we had our consultants, Leland Consulting Group, assist us with that work. Also, in 2025, our Public Works team was working on our functional plan updates for utilities. And then in 2026, we updated our Title 17, our land division ordinance. We adopted a new section of code 1821, which was for housing related, that has been renumbered and incorporated in the draft that Travis went through today. And then our Public Works team continued to work with our transportation consultant and our sewer consultant to finalize those documents that now live within the capital facility plan, which is Appendix B to the comprehensive plan. And all of that culminated to our July 13th release date. And so we're down to last two meetings with you, Planning Commission, on the comprehensive plan work. I don't mean forever, I just mean for this body of work. And so first of all, I just want to say thank you. You have worked very hard. You put in diligent hours. You came prepared and with questions and engaged a good dialogue with Travis and I and our team. And so, first of all, I just want to say thank you for this effort. This comes once every 10 years. When I came to the scene last year, you were very engaged and concerned and wanted to make sure we did it right. And so thank you for giving us the opportunity to do it right. We're proud of this work. We hope you are too. And we're looking forward to wrapping up our time with you and moving into public hearings with you and the city council. Second of all, I just want to note that, as you know, it's been a team effort. And so our Public Works team, who was here at our last meeting, contributed robustly with to our capital facility plan, and our consultants, our Public Works consultants as well. We had a lot of meetings with them. They were responsive to the needs of our, of SQUIM and what we need, timelines that we need for our comprehensive plan. So everyone in Public Works was on board and supportive of the comprehensive plan effort and as well. And then I want to just note our team, Emily Kohler, who will be returning on August 17th, and then Nick, who joined us. He'll be able to stay with our team through the end of the year, and he'll continue to support the Planning Commission through our comprehensive plan process. And then, of course, Travis, who really just did an amazing job with Title 18. And so we've talked about it before, but I'm proud of you, and I'm really proud of that, what Title 18 represents for the city and for our residents and for predictability and clean, clear administration. So overall, just wanted to spend a moment reflecting on our work and just again to thank you, Planning Commission. You've been solid and just been a delight to work with. And as we round the bend on it, our work does not end. Once we conclude with you on September 1st with your public hearing, we will be engaging in October with critical areas ordinance update. So we might catch a breath, perhaps, maybe take a breath in October, maybe cancel a meeting, but we'll be back with more. So the work continues. And so anyway, with that, thank you for giving me a few moments of the floor to just, thank you for this work. So thank you.
Well, thank you.
Oh, we will.
I'm not even turned on. But anyway, thank you. And don't forget to celebrate all of your good work. So, anything for the good of the order? Oh, very.
Yeah, I passed this along to you and Carla. Article in the PDN recently, the PUD, the port, and the county commissioners were addressing some of the economic challenges and the housing challenges out on the West End. And the article actually quotes that people working on the West End are taking up housing stock in Port Angeles. And I think that's something that we've talked about in the past. They say one of the drivers are the vacation homes and the short-term rentals, pushing renters kind of east a little bit into the other school districts. I think that may also affect us because as housing stock is absorbed in Port Angeles, they're going to be forced this way. We did the study, but the three agencies are going to invite Port Angeles. I don't know. I just wanted you to be aware of it because I do think it's kind of a cascading issue. Our study didn't say we had a lot of short-term rentals, but if you take the county in total and how it's affecting everybody, I think it was important. So I'll just leave you. I think I mailed you a copy of the article itself. So just something to put on the radar.
Thank you.
We have a service where our citizens can sign up for emails to be notified of commission and council meetings. And they send an email out, there'll be a council meeting or there'll be a commission meeting, and click here for more information. If you click on the one for the Planning Commission, the only way you can get there is through a team meeting link. doesn't give you an agenda or any information on the meeting. If you could pass that on to whoever does the information.
One reminder, it's a little different subject. Ballot boxes get locked tonight at 8 p.m. So if you haven't voted yet, you know where they are, I hope.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is our adjournment.
I move to adjourn.
Second, any objection to adjourning? Hearing none, we are done. Thank you much for coming and participating.